Let's start by acknowledging a few things. The 45th anniversary of the IMSA GTP class, the 60th anniversary of the Shelby American 1966 victory at Le Mans, and the 125th year of Ford Racing, which is forever linked with that 66 victory over in France. Now tonight's sports car inductee also competed at Le Mans, as well as at Daytona in Jaguars, Porsches, Ferraris, and Datsuns. And like our friend Mr. Vilwalk, he's been racing into his 70s. John, I just realized something, how old you and I really are. I'm looking out there and there's some people that are so young, they don't even know what a Datsun is. You drove them and I owned 2 of them. Well, to some, it might seem like this presenter is a category a little bit late, like a fish out of water. But 1995 Powerboat inductee Chip Hanauer spent 1991 driving sports cars for Toyota, which brings us to tonight. Please welcome Chip to present John Morton for induction.
Evening. Try again. Evening. Evening. Harry. I know a lot of you in this room are asking, why is the boat guy introducing John Moore? I don't know. Oh wait, I do know. John called me and said I'd been inducted to the Motorsports Hall of Fame and I'd like you to introduce me. I said, John, you don't want me. I mean, I know in this room there's great road racers that deserve to be here, that love you and respect you more, you know. They're more qualified to do this. In typical John fashion, he said, I know, but I like them a lot more and I don't want to make them travel that far. That's John. That's his sense of humor. And John leads with his sense of humor, which makes me really love John. And I know I should be here talking about his race wins, the cars, the victory, just everything about racing, but I can't because I'm so overwhelmed with the person that John is. I just want to tell you about John, the person. Why Toyota gave me this opportunity to drive with John, I still don't know. But when they told me that John was going to be my teammate, I was hugely intimidated. Now remember, I'm a boat guy driving race cars completely, no pun intended, a fish out of water. The team said, look, this year you're just supposed to learn and have fun. And as I came to the grid, the team would come by and say, remember, just learn, have fun. You're just here to learn. And John was going to be my co-driver. John came by and said, if you screw this up, I'll kill you. John, again, leading with a sense of humor, I would be, when I wasn't in the car, I was on the radio. John comes on the radio and says, do you have a track map? Yep. Where are the fire stations? Oh, there's one at turn 9. Mr. Watkins Glen, turn 12, whatever. And he says, well, I'm gonna go there because I have one. So 30 seconds goes by and he says, I'm leaving because it's a really big one. The car comes back on a flatbed. Dennis Ossie, who I love dearly, who gave me the opportunity to be with Toyota, said, don't put it in the paddock, put it in the pits. John came walking back. John didn't care he loved the car. The Toyota was great, but it was so good we were beating the class above us. So they put us on this really narrow, hard, difficult tire. John didn't like the car so much. John comes walking down the pit lane, swinging his helmet. He sees it's an 8-hour race. He sees the car being worked on in the pit lane, and he stops and he looks at me and he says, "Are they gonna fix it?" I said, "Yeah. I should have let it burn longer." What's more important to me about John than the racing is who he is. I've never met, racers, we tend to have egos. John doesn't. John doesn't have a racing ego. There was a group of Michelin tire executives, and John Love said, "Hey, John Morton's being inducted in the Hall of Fame," and one of them said, "Well, that guy doesn't have much of an ego." And the president of Michelin Racing said, "Wrong. He has no ego." And he doesn't. And he's charming, he's a gentleman, he's authentic, and I just love him to death. And John, I have to tell you, having me doing this, when I look out and I see so many people that are far more accomplished in road racing than I ever was, this is one of the honors of my life, because I so admire you as a racer and as a person. And the only disappointment I have in you, John, is that instead of being my teammate, I wish you were my next door neighbor, because I would love at the end of every day to sit and have a beer with you in the evening or a cup of coffee and discuss and laugh about everything. So John, thank you so much. I bring you, one last thing. I want to thank Sylvia. Where's Sylvia? There's Sylvia. We all owe Sylvia a great deal of thanks for taking care of John and getting him to here, because he couldn't have done it without Sylvia.
Thank you, Chip. In 1957, my parents took me to the Road America 500, my first sports car race. The race was won by Phil Hill in a Ferrari. Carroll Shelby was second in a Maserati. That day at 15, I decided I'm going to be a race car driver. But I was only 15 and you had to be 21 to race. So I had to finish high school and then go to college. I went to Clemson in South Carolina. And almost immediately met some guys that ran local dirt tracks. And of course I had to buy a car. I only had $43 of school funds. And they found me a 44 two-door sedan, which I raced off and on for the 2 years that I went through college. It was a mistake, but you make mistakes. When I finished college, I came home to Waukegan, Illinois, where I grew up, and told my parents I'm going to go pursue a racing career. I'd read in a magazine that Carroll Shelby had started a racing school called the Carroll Shelby School of High Performance Driving in Riverside, California. My parents, I wouldn't say my mother was particularly supportive, but she didn't condemn me. I think she realized I wasn't quite as bright as she hoped I'd be. Maybe being a race car driver would be a good thing. I went to California, and a man came up on a little motor. I went out to Riverside. A man came up on a little motorcycle, and he said, "My name is Pete Brock. I'm going to be your instructor." And I said, no, Carol Shelby's supposed to be my instructor. And he said, well, Mr. Shelby, there are only 2 Cobras at this time. Mr. Shelby is preparing the second Cobra for a race out here at Riverside in a few weeks. You'll be driving the first Cobra. The fact that that car 57 years later sold for $13 million had nothing to do with the fact that it was my driving school car. The school went well, and toward the end, it was only 5 days, a car pulled into the pits with a pickup truck with a Cobra on the back. It was a red Cobra, and it was the second car. It was followed by Carol Shelby and Billy Krause, the driver. And I asked Peter, could you please just introduce me to Mr. Shelby? He did. And when he did, I said, Mr. Shelby, is there any chance you might find a job for me in your Cobra factory? And he said, come see me Monday. And Monday I became the first janitor. But I learned to weld. I swept the floors a lot. I learned to weld. I made some parts. And I bought, with money I saved by not going to college any longer, I bought a Lotus 7 to start my racing career. And I got my license on my 21st birthday. So that worked out reasonably well. I watched Peter Brock design, went from a school for a driving instructor to a designer, and he did the Cobra Coupe, which is an iconic American car, one of the most iconic built. This was the first one. I watched it come together. And on the Cobra team had really done incredibly well. They were the top team in the country. And this is 1964, it'd been less than a year. Well, it's a little over a year. And they had 5 cars entered at Sebring, 1964 Sebring. And they had the best drivers in the world, like Dan Gurney and Ken Miles, Dave McDonald. I ended up co-driving with Ken Miles in that first 427. It's a long, difficult story, but I went down there as a night watchman and I ended up co-driving with Miles in the first 427 Cobra. It was a desperate move having me drive the car, but they made that move. And in September of the same year, I drove with Miles again in a real, factory team car and we won the Road America 500 with Skip Scott, the 3 of us. And I thought I had it made. I thought my racing life is a fairy tale. But in '65, Ford moved in with a huge presence. They moved the shop to LAX. They were headed for Europe to try to win the manufacturer championship, which they did, and I didn't make the cut. So I was, shortly after that, I was out of work. I made oil pans for a company in the San Fernando Valley called Aviate Metal Products for boats and race cars for 2.5 years. One day, I got a call at work from Peter Brock, of all people. I hadn't talked to him in years, and he wanted me to come, and he had gotten a deal to run Japanese cars, the Datsuns, for the factory. And he had a deal to run 2 cars, only one of them was completed, so he wanted me to build the second car. I said, I'll take the job under one condition. I'd been making $3.20 an hour, and he gave me a raise of, maybe $5.20 an hour. But I took the job, because he promised I could have a tryout. And for the next 3 years, we won 4 national championships, 2 in the 240Z and 2 Trans Am 2.5 championships in the 510. So I was kind of on my way in a way, but you know, it was still tough. But it made it so it put me in a position that I could race for 30 more years. And part of my 30 years was winning Sebring in 1994 with Johnny O'Connell and Steve Millen. It's actually 30 years after my first professional race with Ken Miles. And that's kind of what I did. Being in this, I never thought I'd make it into this. It's a wonderful honor and makes me feel like I really didn't waste my life. And I brought it in the last 2 years of college.